Now that smells like your love.
The text came at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, right when I was finally drifting off to sleep. The blue glow of Celeste's phone lit up our bedroom like a blazing lighthouse beacon, and I watched her grab it with the kind of urgency most people reserve for fire alarms. "I'm blocking you this weekend for girls' night. Don't call me," she typed to someone. Not to me. I was lying right there next to her, pretending to sleep, watching her manicured fingers dance across the screen with practiced secrecy. My name is Eddie Garrison, and I've been married to Celeste for 8 years. 8 years of watching her transform from the sweet HR coordinator I met at a company barbecue into whatever the heck she'd become now. These days, she was the HR director at some hotshot tech startup called Innovate Maine, housed in a converted textile mill downtown. She made twice what I pulled in from my small carpentry business, and she never let me forget it. But lying there in our Victorian house on Maple Street, the house I'd spent 3 years renovating with my own hands, I felt something cold settle in my stomach. That text wasn't meant for a girlfriend. The tone was all wrong, too intimate, too guilty. Celeste set the phone down and rolled over, her blonde hair fanning across the pillow. "Night, Eddie," she whispered, but I could hear the lie in her voice. She was still awake, still thinking about whoever she'd just texted. "Night," I whispered back, my carpenter's hands clenched under the covers. Friday morning came with the usual routine. Celeste in her silk robe, sipping coffee from her favorite mug, the one that said "Boss Lady" in gold letters. She was scrolling through her phone again, that secretive little smile playing at her lips. "So, this girl's weekend," I said, pouring my own coffee into a chipped ceramic mug I'd had since college. "Where are you headed again?" "Portland," she said without looking up. "Tiffany booked us this cute little bed and breakfast. Very exclusive, very private." Tiffany Walsh was Celeste's best friend and biggest enabler. A 35-year-old Instagram influencer who'd never held a real job, but somehow always had money for designer handbags and weekend getaways. She lived off her divorce settlement and spent her days stirring up drama like it was a full-time career. "Sounds expensive," I said. "We deserve it," Celeste replied, finally looking at me with those green eyes that used to make my heart skip. Now they just made me tired. "We work hard. We need to decompress." I nodded and took a sip of my coffee. It tasted bitter, but then again, everything did lately. After Celeste left for work in her BMW, the one she'd insisted we lease because image matters in business, I did something I'd never done before. I went upstairs to our bedroom and looked through her things. I'm not proud of it, but 8 years of marriage teaches you when something's wrong, and everything about Celeste screamed wrong these days. The late nights at the office, the new clothes, the way she'd started going to the gym religiously, coming home with that post-workout glow that seemed to last a little too long. Her gym bag was sitting by the closet, and something made me unzip it. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was desperation, but there, tucked under her yoga pants and sports bras, was a second phone, a second freaking phone. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. The screen was unlocked. Celeste had always been careless with technology, relying on me to fix her computer problems and set up her streaming accounts. The phone was open to a text conversation with someone named B. The messages made my stomach turn. "Can't wait for this weekend. Eddie's getting suspicious, but I told him it's girls' night. My place is perfect. Neighbors are out of town. We'll have complete privacy. I'm so tired of pretending. When are we going to tell him?" "Soon, baby. Soon. Just need to figure out the best way to handle the house situation." I scrolled up, reading weeks of messages. Months, maybe. Photos that made me want to throw the phone against the wall. Plans for a future that didn't include me. And worst of all, jokes about me. About my little carpentry business. About how I was too boring and too comfortable and too trusting. The last message was a calendar invite. Brandon's place, Sat 7 p.m., dinner and dessert. Brandon, I knew that name. Brandon Lyle, some hotshot sales executive who drove a Tesla and lived in one of those new smart homes by the river. He'd been to our Christmas party last year, all charm and perfect teeth, complimenting Celeste on her vision and her leadership skills, while barely acknowledging I existed. I sat on our bed, the bed I'd built from reclaimed oak, the bed where we'd made love for the first time in this house, and felt something break inside me. Not my heart. That had been cracking for months. Something deeper. Something that had been holding me back from seeing what was right in front of me. Celeste wasn't just cheating on me. She was planning to leave me, and she was laughing about it with her lover and her friends. But here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. People forget that quiet doesn't mean stupid. They forget that the guy who fixes things for a living knows how things work, and they really forget that someone who spent years making other people comfortable might just know how to make them very, very uncomfortable. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and went downstairs to my workshop. I had some planning to do. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October air that makes Maine feel like the most beautiful place on earth. Celeste was up early, packing her weekend bag with the kind of care most people reserve for international travel. I watched her from the kitchen, sipping my coffee and eating toast like it was any other Saturday. "You sure you don't want to come with me and the girls?" she asked, not meaning it. It was the kind of invitation you extend when you're absolutely certain it'll be declined. "Nah," I said, spreading peanut butter on my toast with deliberate slowness. "Got some projects to finish up. Mrs. O'Hara wants me to fix her back steps before winter." Mrs. O'Hara was our 73-year-old neighbor, a retired school principal who knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. She'd lived on Maple Street for 40 years and had appointed herself the unofficial neighborhood watch coordinator. "Of course you do," Celeste said, and I caught that tone. The one that said my work wasn't real work, that helping neighbors was somehow beneath her vision of success. She kissed my cheek, a dry, perfunctory peck, and headed for the door. "I'll be back Sunday evening. Don't wait up if I'm late. You know how Tiffany gets when she's had wine." "Have fun," I said, and I meant it. She was going to have the time of her life, right up until she tried to come home. I waited exactly 30 minutes after she left before I got to work. First stop, Hanson's Hardware on Main Street. Old Pete Hanson had been selling locks and keys in this town since before I was born, and he didn't ask questions when I bought a complete lock replacement kit for my front and back doors. "Upgrading security?" he asked, ringing up the sale. "Something like that," I said. Next stop, the post office. I rented a P.O. box and filled out a change of address form for Celeste Garrison. All her mail would now be delivered to box 247 instead of our house. The postal worker, a tired-looking woman named Janet, processed the paperwork without batting an eye. "Takes effect Monday," she said. "You'll need to pick up mail daily or it'll get returned to sender." "Perfect," I said. By noon, I was back home, replacing locks with the kind of precision that comes from 20 years of working with my hands. The old Victorian had solid bones, and the new deadbolts fit like they'd been made for those doors. I changed the garage door code, too, and the keypad on our security system. Then came the fun part. Celeste's closet was a shrine to her new life. Designer clothes, shoes that cost more than most people's car payments, jewelry I'd never seen her wear around me. I packed it all, carefully and methodically, into boxes from my workshop. Every dress, every pair of heels, every piece of jewelry that screamed, "I'm too good for my husband." I didn't throw anything away. I'm not a monster. I just relocated it all to the basement, stacked neatly in labeled boxes like I was preparing for a move, which, in a way, I was. The final touch was the letter. I spent an hour writing it, making sure every word was exactly right. "Celeste, your girl's weekend is canceled. So is our marriage. Your belongings are safe and will be returned when you arrange to collect them. Your mail is being held at the post office. The locks have been changed for security reasons. I know about Brandon. I know about the plans. I know about the jokes. Enjoy your new life. It starts now. Eddie P.S. The house is in my name. Check the deed if you don't believe me." I taped the letter to the front door and settled in to wait. Mrs. O'Hara knocked around 3 o'clock, carrying a plate of her famous oatmeal cookies. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and silver hair that she kept in a perfect bob, and she missed absolutely nothing that happened on our street. "Saw you changing the locks, Eddie," she said, settling into one of the kitchen chairs I'd made from maplewood last spring. "Everything all right?" "Just some overdue maintenance," I said, pouring her a cup of coffee. "You know how it is." She studied my face with the kind of intensity that had probably terrified generations of middle schoolers. "Celeste's car hasn't been in the driveway much lately. Working late?" "Something like that, Mrs. O'Hara nodded slowly. "You know, I've lived on this street for 40 years, seen a lot of marriages come and go. The ones that last are built on honesty. The ones that don't," she shrugged and bit into a cookie, "well, they usually end with someone changing the locks." I almost smiled, almost. "These cookies are incredible, Mrs. O'Hara. My grandmother's recipe," she said. Some things are worth preserving. Others, another shrug. Others need to be cleared out to make room for something better. She left around 4, but not before positioning herself at her front window with a clear view of our driveway. Mrs. O'Hara loved a good show, and she sensed one was coming. Celeste's BMW pulled into the driveway at 6:15 p.m. I watched from the living room window as she sat in the car for a moment, probably texting Brandon about her change of plans. Then she got out, grabbed her weekend bag, and walked to the front door like she owned the place. Which, legally speaking, she didn't. I heard her key hit the lock. Turn, stop, try again. The sound of frustration was audible even through the solid oak door I'd refinished myself. Eddie? Her voice was confused, not angry yet. Eddie, something's wrong with the lock. I opened the door but left the chain engaged so she could see me but couldn't come in. The lock's fine, I said calmly. It's new. Her green eyes widened as she processed what I was saying. What do you mean, new? Eddie, what's going on? Read the letter, I said, and closed the door. The explosion came about 30 seconds later. Eddie, open this door right now! She was pounding on the wood with her fists, her voice rising to a pitch that probably had dogs howling 3 blocks away. What the heck is wrong with you? I could hear Mrs. O'Hara's front door open, then the Johnsons' door across the street. The Kowalskis from 2 houses down came out to check their mailbox, which definitely didn't need checking at 6:30 on a Saturday evening. Celeste's phone was buzzing constantly. Probably Brandon, wondering where she was. Probably Tiffany, ready to hear all about the dramatic confrontation with the boring husband. I know you can hear me, Celeste screamed. This is my house too. I opened the door again, chain still engaged. Actually, it's not, I said quietly. Check the deed. Your name isn't on it. Never was. Her face went white. In all our years together, she'd never bothered to look at the paperwork when we bought the house. She'd been too busy with her career, too trusting that I'd handle the boring details, too confident that she was the smart one in the relationship. You can't do this, she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. I can, and I did, I said. Your things are safe. Your mail is at the post office, box 247. You have the key somewhere in that designer purse. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Maybe she was. Eddie, please, we can talk about this. We can work it out. No, I said. We can't. Have a nice life, Celeste. Give my regards to Brandon. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. The sound echoed through the house like a gavel strike. Outside, Celeste's voice cracked as she screamed my name one more time. Then I heard her heels clicking rapidly down the front steps, her car door slamming, the BMW's engine roaring to life. Mrs. O'Hara was still at her window when Celeste's taillights disappeared down Maple Street. She caught my eye through the glass and gave me a small nod of approval. My phone started buzzing immediately, text after text from numbers I didn't recognize. From Tiffany, from people at Celeste's work. The news was spreading fast, but there was one text that made me smile. Abort, trouble, something's wrong with Eddie. It was from Brandon's phone. Celeste must have called him in a panic. I texted back from Celeste's second phone, which I decided to keep as evidence. Trip's canceled, so is everything else. Then I poured myself a beer, sat in my favorite chair, the leather recliner Celeste had always hated, and waited for the real fun to begin. Sunday morning brought 3 things: a hangover-free clarity I hadn't felt in months, a stack of increasingly frantic voicemails from Celeste, and my best friend Mick Callahan standing on my front porch with 2 cups of coffee and a crap-eating grin. So, Mick said, pushing past me into the kitchen, I heard you grew a spine yesterday. Mick was my opposite in almost every way. Where I was quiet and methodical, he was loud and impulsive. Where I planned things out, he acted on instinct. But we'd been friends since high school, and he was the only person who'd never made me feel like settling down with Celeste was a mistake. Probably because he'd seen through her from day one. News travels fast, I said, accepting the coffee. Mrs. O'Hara called my mother at 7 this morning. My mother called me at 7:15. By 8, half the town knew Celeste Garrison got locked out of her own house. He took a long sip of coffee. Except it's not her house, is it? Nope. Smart man, so what's the plan? I'd been thinking about that all night, lying alone in my bed. Our bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the old house settle around me. Celeste had spent months planning her exit strategy with Brandon. They'd made jokes about me, plotted behind my back, treated me like I was too stupid to notice what was happening right under my nose. Now it was my turn, I need to get into Brandon's building, I said. Mick raised an eyebrow. Breaking and entering? That's not really your style, Eddie. Not breaking, entering. I pulled Celeste's gym membership card from my wallet. Riverside Fitness, same building as Brandon's smart home. Celeste's been going there religiously for 6 months. Funny thing is, she never mentioned they had co-ed locker rooms. Understanding dawned on Mick's face. She wasn't going there to work out. Oh, she was working out. Just not on the treadmill. We drove to Riverside Fitness in Mick's pickup truck, the kind of vehicle that could blend in anywhere in Maine. The building was one of those modern mixed-use developments that had sprung up along the Penobscot River. Condos on the upper floors, retail and fitness on the ground level. Brandon lived in Unit 4B, according to the mailboxes in the lobby. Celeste's gym card worked perfectly. The desk attendant, a college kid with more muscles than brain cells, barely looked up from his phone as we walked past. We're here to see Brandon Lyle, I told him. He's expecting us. Cool, man. Elevators are over there. The elevator ride to the 4th floor gave me time to think about what I was doing. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about balance. Celeste and Brandon had spent months making me feel invisible, irrelevant, stupid. They'd planned to humiliate me, to take everything I'd worked for and laugh about it. Now they were going to learn what real humiliation felt like. Brandon's door was at the end of the hallway, marked with a sleek metal nameplate that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. I could hear voices inside. Celeste's voice, high and angry, and Brandon's, trying to calm her down. I knocked. The voices stopped. Footsteps. The door opened, and Brandon Lyle stood there in his designer pajamas, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. He was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, perfectly groomed, the kind of guy who probably spent more on hair products in a month than I spent on groceries. His apartment behind him looked like a showroom. All clean lines and expensive gadgets, the kind of place that screamed, "I have money, but no soul." "Eddie," he said, and I could hear the guilt in his voice. We weren't. Relax, Brandon, I said. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to deliver something. I held up a manila envelope. Celeste left this at the house, figured she might need it. Behind Brandon, I could see Celeste pacing in the living room, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her perfect hair disheveled. She looked like she hadn't slept. Brandon took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 2 words, "Game over." But he didn't know that yet. "Thanks," he said, trying to close the door. I put my foot against it, not aggressively, just firmly. "Brandon, can I give you some advice? Man to man?" He nodded, probably because he was too scared to do anything else. "When you steal someone's wife, you should probably make sure you can handle the consequences. Celeste's got expensive tastes. Hope your sales commissions are as good as you think they are." I could see the doubt creep into his eyes, the first crack in his confidence. "Oh, and Brandon, you might want to check your car. Celeste was pretty upset when she got here last night. She might have taken it out on your Tesla." I was lying, but he didn't know that. I watched him glance toward the window, probably trying to see the parking garage from his 4th-floor apartment. "Have a great day, you two," I said, and walked away. Mick was waiting by the elevator, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "What was in the envelope?" he asked as we rode down. "A message," I said, "but the real message is what comes next." We stopped at Murphy's Auto Supply on the way back to my house. I bought a bottle of fish sauce from the Asian grocery next door, and Mick contributed a bag of craft glitter from the dollar store. "This is either brilliant or insane," Mick said as we parked near Brandon's building. "Why not both?" Brandon's Tesla was easy to spot in the parking garage, the only car that looked like it had been designed by aliens for people with more money than sense. It was parked in a reserved spot marked B. Lyle, because of course it was. The fish sauce went under the door handles and in the air intake vents. The glitter went everywhere else, mixed with a little water to make it stick, applied with the kind of precision I usually reserve for finished carpentry. By the time we were done, Brandon's pride and joy looked like a unicorn had exploded all over it. "Think he'll call the cops?" Mick asked as we walked back to his truck. "And tell them what? That someone vandalized his car while he was sleeping with a married woman? Brandon's not stupid, just arrogant. He'll figure out how to clean it up and pretend it never happened." We celebrated at the Anchor, the kind of dive bar that had been serving the working class of our town since before either of us was born. The bartender, a woman named Rosa, who'd known us since high school, poured our beers without being asked. "Heard you had some excitement yesterday," she said, polishing glasses with practiced efficiency. "News travels fast in a small town," I said. "Especially when it's good news," Rosa replied. "That wife of yours always acted like she was too good for this place. Too good for you too, if you ask me." I didn't ask, but I appreciated the sentiment. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. This is crazy." "See," I showed it to Mick. "You going to answer?" "Eventually," I said. "But not yet. Let her sweat a little more." Another text. This one from Brandon's phone. "Your wife is having a breakdown. This has gone far enough." I typed back, "She's not my wife anymore, and this is just getting started." Because it was. Celeste and Brandon had spent months planning their perfect little affair, their perfect little exit strategy, their perfect little future together. They'd made their plans in secret, thinking I was too trusting, too boring, too comfortable to ever fight back. They were about to learn that the quiet guy who fixes things for a living knows exactly how to break them too. And I was just getting warmed up. Monday morning came with the kind of autumn chill that makes you grateful for flannel shirts and hot coffee. I was up early, sitting in my kitchen and watching Mrs. O'Hara tend to her garden through the window, when my phone started buzzing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. The first one was from Tiffany Walsh. "Eddie, what the heck is wrong with you?" she screeched before I could even say hello. "Celeste is devastated. She's been crying all night." "Good morning to you too, Tiffany. Don't you good morning me? You can't just lock someone out of their own house." "It's not her house," I said calmly, sipping my coffee. "Never was. Check the deed if you don't believe me." There was a pause. Tiffany had probably never looked at a property deed in her life. "That's not the point. You're married. You're supposed to work things out." "We are working things out," I said, "just not the way she planned." I hung up and blocked her number. The second call was from Jules Martinez, Celeste's co-worker at Innovate Maine. Jules was one of those people who thrived on workplace drama, always stirring the pot and then acting innocent when things boiled over. "Eddie, I don't know what's going on between you and Celeste, but she's a mess. She showed up to work wearing the same clothes from yesterday, and she's been crying in the bathroom all morning." "That's unfortunate," I said. "Miss Lynn is asking questions. Celeste's supposed to give a presentation to the board this afternoon, and she can barely string two sentences together." Miss Lynn was the company's founder and CEO, a no-nonsense woman who'd built Innovate Maine from nothing and didn't tolerate drama in her workplace. "Maybe she should have thought about that before she decided to blow up her marriage," I said. "Eddie, come on. Whatever she did, you guys can work it out. You're both adults." "You're right," I said. "We are adults, which is why she should have acted like one." I hung up on Jules too, but her call had given me an idea. I spent the morning in my workshop not building anything, just thinking. Celeste's second phone was sitting on my workbench, filled with months of evidence of her affair with Brandon. Photos, messages, plans for their future together. Everything I needed to show the world exactly who my wife really was. The question was how to use it. Around noon, I drove to Innovate Maine. The converted textile mill was an impressive building, all exposed brick and modern glass, the kind of place that looked like it belonged in Silicon Valley instead of small-town Maine. Celeste had always been proud to work there, proud to be part of something innovative and disruptive. The lobby was all polished concrete and industrial lighting, with a reception desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of marble. The receptionist, a young woman with purple hair and multiple piercings, looked up as I approached. "I'm here to return something to Miss Lynn," I said, holding up a manila envelope. "One of her employees left this in my business. Thought she might need it." "I can make sure she gets it," the receptionist said. "Thanks. It's from the Lost and Found at Garrison Carpentry. We found it in our parking lot this morning." I handed over the envelope and left before she could ask any more questions. Inside the envelope was Celeste's second phone, along with a note. "Found this in our parking lot this morning. Thought one of your employees might be missing it. Eddie Garrison, Garrison Carpentry." I'd left the phone unlocked, open to the text conversation with Brandon. Any reasonable person would try to figure out who it belonged to before returning it, and any reasonable CEO would want to know why one of her employees was conducting a very personal affair on company time, possibly with a client. My phone rang as I was driving home. Unknown number. "Mr. Garrison, this is Linda Lynn from Innovate Maine. I believe you found something that belongs to one of my employees." "That's right. Found it in my parking lot this morning. Figured someone might be looking for it. There was a pause. Mr. Garrison, are you aware of the content on this device? I saw enough to know it didn't belong to me, I said carefully. Another pause. Longer this time. I see. Well, thank you for returning it. We'll make sure it gets back to its owner. No problem. Have a good day, Miss Lynn. I hung up and allowed myself a small smile. Miss Lynn hadn't built a successful company by ignoring problems, and Celeste's affair with Brandon, who I was pretty sure was one of Innovate Maine's clients, was definitely a problem. The afternoon brought more calls, more texts, more people trying to convince me that I was being unreasonable, that I should take Celeste back, that marriages were supposed to survive rough patches. What none of them understood was that this wasn't a rough patch. This was the end of something that had been dying for months, maybe years. I was just the one who'd finally pulled the plug. Around 5 o'clock, my phone rang with a call I'd been expecting. Eddie? Celeste's voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying or screaming or both. We need to talk. No, we don't. Yes, we do. You can't just destroy everything because you're upset. I'm not upset, I said. I'm done. Eddie, please. I know you found the phone. I know you're angry, but we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can... Celeste, I interrupted. Let me ask you something. When you and Brandon were planning your new life together, when you were joking about my little carpentry business and figuring out how to handle the house situation, did you ever think about working it out then? Silence. Did you ever think about counseling when you were taking pictures for him? When you were making plans to leave me? When you were laughing about how trusting and boring I was? More silence. That's what I thought, I said. You made your choice, Celeste. Now you get to live with it. Eddie, wait. I hung up. My phone immediately started buzzing with texts from Brandon's number. This has gone far enough. You're destroying her career. Be a man and talk to us. I typed back. A man protects what's his. A man fights for his marriage. A man doesn't steal someone else's wife. Which one of us is being a man here, Brandon? No response. That evening, Mrs. O'Hara knocked on my door with another plate of cookies and a bottle of wine. Thought you might need this, she said, settling into her usual chair at my kitchen table. Rough day? Interesting day, she said. Saw Celeste's car drive by 3 times this afternoon. She didn't stop. Probably working up the courage. Or working up the anger. Mrs. O'Hara poured herself a glass of wine. You know, Eddie, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. About some things being worth preserving and others needing to be cleared out. I waited. I think you're doing the right thing, she said. That girl never appreciated what she had. Never appreciated you. Sometimes people need to lose something before they understand its value. And sometimes they don't deserve to get it back, I said. Mrs. O'Hara raised her glass. To new beginnings. We drank to that, sitting in my kitchen as the sun set over Maple Street, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. But I knew it wouldn't last. Celeste and Brandon were going to fight back. They were going to try to turn this around, to make me the villain in their story. They were welcome to try. Because tomorrow, the real fun was going to begin. Tuesday morning brought rain, and the kind of news that made me realize I had underestimated just how much damage one unlocked phone could do. The call came from Mick at 7:30 a.m. Eddie, you need to see this, he said, his voice tight with excitement. Check your email, now. I opened my laptop and found a forwarded message from an email address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, Innovate Maine Drama. You won't believe this. Inside was a screenshot of what looked like the company's internal Slack channel. Someone had posted a series of photos. The same photos I'd seen on Celeste's second phone, the ones she'd sent to Brandon. Intimate photos, compromising photos, photos that definitely hadn't been taken in her office, but had apparently been shared there. The comments below were brutal. Is this our HR director? With Brandon Lyle, isn't he married? Aren't they both married? This explains why she's been giving him preferential treatment on his contracts. HR is supposed to prevent this kind of thing, not participate in it. The final comment from someone with admin privileges read, This channel has been archived. Please see Miss Lynn for any questions. Holy crap, I whispered. My phone rang immediately. It was Jules from Innovate Maine, and she sounded panicked. Eddie, did you see it? Did you see what happened? See what? I asked, playing dumb. Someone leaked Celeste's photos to the company's Slack channel. Everyone's seen them. Miss Lynn called an emergency meeting, and Celeste's been in her office for 2 hours. I felt a stab of something that might have been guilt, but it passed quickly. I hadn't leaked those photos. Someone else at Innovate Maine had seen them on the phone I'd returned and decided to share them with the world. Someone who probably had their own grudge against Celeste. That's terrible, I said. Eddie, you have to know she didn't mean for this to happen. She never wanted to hurt you. Really? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like hurting me was exactly what she wanted to do. Jewel was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. I'm going to finish my coffee, go to work, and live my life. Celeste made her choices. Now she gets to live with the consequences. I hung up and poured myself another cup of coffee, trying to process what I was feeling. Part of me was satisfied. Celeste was finally facing real consequences for her actions. But part of me felt sick. Those photos being shared publicly wasn't something I'd planned or wanted. My phone buzzed with a text from Brandon. This is all your fault. You destroyed her. I typed back. I didn't post those photos. But I didn't take them either. Maybe you should ask yourself who at her company hates her enough to do this. The response came quickly. You're a bastard. And you're a homewrecker. At least I'm honest about what I am. The rest of the morning was quiet. I spent it in my workshop, actually working for the first time in days. I had a kitchen renovation to finish for the Hendersons, and focusing on the familiar rhythm of measuring, cutting, and fitting helped clear my head. Around noon, Mrs. O'Hara knocked on my workshop door. You've got visitors, she said, her voice carefully neutral. I looked out the window and saw Celeste's BMW in my driveway, along with Brandon's Tesla, which still had traces of glitter in the crevices, I was pleased to note. They were standing on my front porch, Celeste in a rumpled business suit and Brandon in jeans and a polo shirt. Both of them looked like they'd aged 5 years in the past 3 days. Want me to call the police? Mrs. O'Hara asked. No, I said. Let's see what they have to say. I walked to the front door and opened it, but didn't invite them in. Celeste's eyes were red and swollen. Her perfect makeup was gone, and her usually immaculate hair looked like she'd been running her hands through it. Eddie, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Please, we need to talk. No, we don't. Yes, we do. Brandon stepped forward, and I could see the anger in his eyes. You've destroyed her career. You've humiliated her in front of everyone she works with. I didn't post those photos, I said calmly. But you gave them the phone, Celeste's voice cracked. You knew what would happen. I returned lost property to its rightful owner. What your coworkers did with it isn't my responsibility. You bastard, Brandon snarled. You planned this whole thing. I looked at him, really looked at him. 3 days ago, he'd been confident, arrogant, secure in his ability to take whatever he wanted. Now he looked scared and desperate, probably realizing that his own career was about to take a hit when word spread about his affair with a client's employee. Brandon, I said quietly, let me explain something to you. For months, you and my wife planned to destroy my life. You made jokes about me. You plotted behind my back. You treated me like I was too stupid to notice what was happening right under my nose. I stepped closer to him, close enough that he had to look up to meet my eyes. The difference between us is that when I decided to fight back, I didn't hide. I didn't sneak around. I didn't lie. I just stopped protecting people who didn't deserve protection. Brandon's face had gone pale. You can't. I can. And I did. I turned to Celeste. You want to know what's really funny about all this? I would have fought for our marriage. If you'd come to me 6 months ago and said you were unhappy, if you'd asked for counseling or separation or even divorce, I would have respected that. I would have tried to work it out. Tears were streaming down her face now. But you didn't do that. You decided to humiliate me instead. You decided to make me the joke while you planned your exit strategy. You decided I didn't deserve honesty or respect or even basic human decency. Eddie, I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there are consequences, but you're not sorry for what you did. I stepped back and started to close the door. Wait, Celeste grabbed the door frame. What do you want? Money? The car? I'll give you whatever you want. I stopped and looked at her one more time. At the woman I'd loved for 8 years, the woman I'd built a life with, the woman who'd thrown it all away for a few months of excitement with a man who was already looking for the exits. I don't want anything from you, Celeste. I want you to leave. I want you to take your boyfriend and your drama and your lies and get off my property. I want you to stop calling me, stop texting me, and stop pretending that what we had was worth saving. But the house is mine. The business is mine. The life I built is mine. You gave up any claim to it when you decided Brandon was more important than our marriage. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. They stood on my porch for another 10 minutes, Celeste crying and Brandon trying to convince her to leave. I watched from the living room window as they finally walked back to their cars, defeated and humiliated, but I knew this wasn't over. People like Celeste and Brandon don't give up easily. They'd regroup, make new plans, try to find a way to turn this around. That was fine with me, because I wasn't done either. The real finale was still to come. The town's annual Harvest Festival was scheduled for Saturday, and by Thursday it was clear that Celeste and Brandon's drama had become the main attraction. Everywhere I went, the hardware store, the grocery store, the anchor, people were talking about it in hushed, excited voices. Did you hear about the photos? I heard she got fired. I heard he's getting divorced. I heard Eddie Garrison finally grew a backbone. That last one made me smile. Mick found me in my workshop Thursday evening, carrying a six-pack of beer and wearing the kind of grin that usually meant trouble. So, he said, settling into an old chair I kept for visitors, word is that Celeste and Brandon are planning something for the festival. I looked up from the cabinet doors I was sanding. What kind of something? Public reconciliation. They're going to show up together, make a big scene about how you're the villain in this story, paint themselves as the victims of a crazy, controlling husband. I'd been expecting this. Celeste had always been good at playing the victim when it suited her purposes, and Brandon was exactly the kind of guy who would think a public relations campaign could fix his problems. Where'd you hear this? Rosa at the anchor. Apparently Tiffany's been running her mouth all over town, telling anyone who'll listen that you're having some kind of breakdown, that you've been stalking them, threatening them, trying to destroy their true love. I set down my sandpaper and reached for one of Mick's beers. Well, I said, I guess we'd better make sure they get the reception they deserve. Friday night, I made a call to my sister Laurel in Portland. Laurel was 3 years older than me and had spent the last 15 years as a divorce attorney, which meant she knew exactly how messy these situations could get. Eddie, she said, I've been waiting for you to call. Mom told me what happened. What do you think? I think Celeste picked the wrong brother to mess with. You always were the smart one in the family. Laurel had never liked Celeste, though she'd been polite about it for my sake. Too polite, as it turned out. I need a favor, I said. Name it. Can you be in town tomorrow for the festival? Wouldn't miss it. What do you need me to do? I told her. Saturday dawned clear and cold, perfect weather for the Harvest Festival. By 10 a.m., Main Street was packed with vendors, families, and the kind of small-town atmosphere that made you forget about the rest of the world's problems. I spent the morning helping Mrs. O'Hara set up her booth. She sold homemade preserves and baked goods every year, and always needed someone tall enough to hang her banner. It was peaceful work, the kind of thing I'd always enjoyed about living in a small town. You ready for this? She asked as we arranged jars of apple butter on her table. As ready as I can be. Good, because here they come. I looked up and saw Celeste and Brandon walking down Main Street hand in hand, both of them dressed like they were heading to a country club instead of a small-town festival. Celeste was wearing a sundress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and Brandon had on khakis and a sweater that screamed, I'm rich and approachable. They were putting on a show, smiling and waving at people like they were running for office. But I could see the tension in their faces, the way Celeste's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, the way Brandon kept glancing around like he was looking for escape routes. Showtime, I murmured. They made their way through the crowd, stopping at various booths, making small talk with people who were clearly more interested in gossip than conversation. I watched from Mrs. O'Hara's booth, staying in the background, letting them think they were controlling the narrative. Around noon, they made their move. I was buying a funnel cake from the Lions Club booth when I heard Celeste's voice behind me, loud enough for everyone in the immediate area to hear. Eddie, there you are. I turned around slowly. Celeste and Brandon were standing about 10 feet away, surrounded by a growing crowd of curious onlookers. Celeste's smile was bright and fake, the kind she used at work parties when she was trying to impress her boss. Hello, Celeste. Eddie, I'm so glad we ran into you. Brandon and I have been trying to reach you all week. We really need to clear the air about this whole misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. That was rich. There's no misunderstanding, I said calmly. You cheated on me with Brandon. You planned to leave me. You got caught. End of story. The crowd was getting bigger now. I could see phones coming out, people positioning themselves to get the best view of whatever was about to happen. "Eddie, please," Celeste said, her voice taking on that wounded tone she'd perfected over the years. "You're making this so much harder than it needs to be. Yes, I made mistakes, but we can work through this. We're married. We took vows." "You broke those vows the first time you slept with him," I said, nodding toward Brandon. Brandon stepped forward, his chest puffed out like he was trying to intimidate me. "Look, Eddie, I know you're hurt, but you need to stop harassing Celeste. What happened between us, it just happened. Sometimes people fall in love." "Fall in love?" I laughed, a sound that carried across the suddenly quiet crowd. "Is that what you call it?" I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. I'd been carrying Celeste's second phone for a week now, and I'd found more than just photos and text messages on it. "Let me play something for you, Brandon. Something Celeste recorded the last time you two were together." I hit play, and Celeste's voice filled the air, crystal clear and unmistakable. "God, I can't wait to get rid of him. Eddie's so boring, so predictable. He has no idea what real passion feels like." Brandon's voice responded, "What about the house? He's not going to just give it up." "Please. Eddie's too weak to fight for anything. He'll probably just roll over and take whatever I give him. Men like him always do." The crowd had gone completely silent. I could see Celeste's face going white, could see Brandon looking around desperately for an escape route, but I wasn't done. "Here's another good one," I said, scrolling through the recordings. "This is from last month." Celeste's voice again. "I told Tiffany about us. She thinks it's hilarious that Eddie hasn't figured it out yet. She said he's like a golden retriever, loyal and stupid." Brandon laughing. "At least golden retrievers are useful. What does Eddie actually do besides fix things?" "Nothing important. God, I can't believe I wasted 8 years on him." I put the phone away and looked at the crowd. Some of them were people I'd known my whole life. Some were Celeste's co-workers. Some were just strangers who'd come to enjoy a small-town festival and gotten more entertainment than they'd bargained for. "So," I said, my voice carrying across the silent street, "does that sound like love to you, Brandon? Because to me, it sounds like two people who enjoyed making jokes at my expense." Celeste was crying now, but they weren't the tears of someone who was sorry. They were the tears of someone who'd been caught and humiliated in front of half the town. "Eddie, please," she whispered. "You're destroying everything." "No," I said. "You destroyed everything. I'm just making sure everyone knows who's responsible." That's when Laurel stepped out of the crowd. My sister looked like she'd stepped off the cover of a legal magazine. Perfectly dressed, perfectly composed, and absolutely lethal when she wanted to be. "Celeste," she said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made courtrooms go quiet. "I think you should know that Eddie's filed for divorce. The papers will be served on Monday." Celeste stared at her in shock. "You can't. We can work this out." "Actually, we can't," Laurel continued. "Maine is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery is still grounds for an unequal distribution of assets, which means Eddie gets to keep the house, the business, and pretty much everything else he brought to the marriage." She handed Celeste a business card. "You might want to get yourself a lawyer. A good one." Brandon grabbed Celeste's arm. "Come on, we're leaving." But I wasn't ready to let them go just yet. "Brandon," I called out as they started to walk away. "One more thing." He turned back, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "Your Tesla looks good with the glitter. Really brings out the color." For a moment, I thought he was going to take a swing at me. His hands clenched into fists, his whole body tensed up like he was ready to fight. But then he looked around at the crowd, at all the phones pointed in his direction, at all the people who were going to remember this moment for years to come, and he deflated. "Come on, Celeste," he muttered, pulling her toward the parking lot. "Let's get out of here." They walked away through a crowd that parted like the Red Sea, everyone staring, everyone whispering, everyone knowing exactly what they'd just witnessed. I stood there for a moment, watching them go, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Freedom. Mrs. O'Hara appeared at my elbow, carrying 2 cups of apple cider. "Well," she said, handing me one of the cups. "I'd say that went well. Better than I expected. What happens now?" I looked around at the festival, at the people who were already starting to go back to their conversations and their funnel cakes and their normal Saturday afternoon activities. At the town that had been my home for most of my life, where I'd built a business and a reputation and a future that didn't include a wife who thought I was boring and predictable. "Now," I said, "I get back to living my life." Mick appeared with a beer in his hand. and a grin on his face. "Eddie Garrison," he said. "You magnificent bastard. That was beautiful. It was necessary." "Same thing." He raised his beer. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I agreed. We drank to that, standing in the middle of Main Street while the Harvest Festival continued around us, and I realized that for the first time in months, I was exactly where I wanted to be. Celeste and Brandon were gone, their perfect little affair exposed for what it really was. Their reputations were ruined, their careers were probably over, and their future together would be built on the foundation of everyone knowing exactly how it started. As for me, I had my house, my business, my friends, and my dignity intact. And I had something else too, the knowledge that when someone tries to destroy your life, sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let them. I finished my cider, threw away the cup, and walked back toward Maple Street, leaving the festival behind. Mrs. O'Hara was right. Some things were worth preserving. Others just needed to be cleared out to make room for something better.